Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you're part of our journey. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and get ready for a story that will leave you thinking. And if you love inspiring tales, a like goes a long way. Nobody deserves to be treated like that. The words hung in the air as the diner fell silent. The businessman's laughter stopped mid-sentence, his face frozen between mockery and shock. He didn't see the man who had spoken, not yet, but everyone else did, their eyes widening in recognition. The roadside diner glowed like a lonely lighthouse against the midnight darkness of the highway. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed over cracked vinyl booths and smudged formica tables. Sarah's uniform clung to her after 12 hours on her feet, the name tag crooked, dark circles framing tired eyes. 3 textbooks peeked from her backpack behind the counter. Tomorrow's exam wouldn't study for itself. The businessman in his tailored suit had been dissecting her every move for an hour, sending back his food twice, demanding special attention while belittling her education, her appearance, her existence. When she finally brought his check, he smirked and pushed it away, announcing to the silent diner that the service wasn't worth paying for. The other customers looked away uncomfortably. Nobody stood up. Nobody spoke. Until now. If this moment made you feel something, imagine what's coming next. Hit that like button and stay with us. Subscribe now. Sarah stood frozen, check still extended in her trembling hand. The businessman's cologne, expensive and overwhelming, seemed to fill the diner as he leaned back, arms crossed over his monogrammed shirt. His watch alone could have paid her tuition for a semester. Around them, the hum of the diner had disappeared into a vacuum of uncomfortable silence. The night cook peered through the service window, spatula suspended mid-flip. I asked for medium rare. She brought me medium. I asked for extra sauce on the side. It came drowning in it. I asked for prompt service. I got a waitress more interested in her textbooks. The businessman's voice carried the practiced projection of someone used to being heard, used to his opinions mattering above all others. He gestured dismissively toward Sarah without looking at her. Maybe if you spent less time dreaming about degrees you'll never use and more time focusing on the job you're clearly suited for, you'd earn your tips. A phone camera light switched on from a nearby booth, then another. In the harsh fluorescent lighting, Sarah's humiliation would be captured in perfect digital clarity, possibly shared for strangers' entertainment before her shift even ended. The tears welling in her eyes threatened to spill over, but she blinked them back fiercely. She couldn't afford to lose this job, not when her final tuition payment was due next week. The businessman's friends, 3 equally well-dressed men, chuckled from their seats. One whispered something that made the others snicker louder. Sarah's cheeks burned as she sensed the weight of every gaze in the diner. The night manager was nowhere to be seen, probably hiding in the office to avoid confrontation with customers who looked like they could afford lawyers. "Sir, Sarah began, her voice barely audible. The businessman cut her off with a sharp wave of his hand. "Don't sir me now. You had your chance to provide decent service. Consider this a lesson in customer satisfaction." He pushed his half-empty plate away with manicured fingers, the diamond cufflink catching the light. "Maybe next time you'll pay attention." The video recording continued. A teenager in the corner booth whispered, "Is that going on TikTok?" His companion nodded enthusiastically. Sarah felt her future interviews, her professional life, potentially tainted by whatever caption would accompany this viral moment of her humiliation. The unfairness of it all, working doubles to pay for an education while being treated like she was nothing, made her hands shake harder, the check now crumpled in her grip. In the silence that stretched between heartbeats, the scrape of a chair against linoleum floor cut through the tension. Heads turned toward the sound, toward the darkened corner booth where a solitary figure had been sitting quietly for the past hour. The man who stood wasn't particularly imposing in his casual black jeans and simple dark jacket. His beard was slightly unkempt, his hair falling just past his shoulders. What caught everyone's attention wasn't his appearance, but the quiet authority in his movement, deliberate, unhurried, yet somehow commanding. A few gasps rippled through the diner as recognition dawned on the customers' faces. "Nobody deserves to be treated like that," he repeated, his voice carrying the same gentle intensity that had silenced the room moments before. The businessman turned, annoyance flashing across his face at the interruption, before his expression shifted to surprise and then something harder to read. The phones recording Sarah's humiliation now swiveled to capture this unexpected development. The air in the diner seemed to electrify as Keanu Reeves stepped from the shadows into the harsh overhead light. He wasn't dressed for recognition, no entourage, no security, just a man stopping at a roadside diner in the middle of the night. Yet there was no mistaking him. Sarah stared in disbelief, the crumpled check still clutched in her hand. The businessman's friends stopped laughing, suddenly more interested in studying their water glasses. The cook had abandoned all pretense of cooking, standing openly in the service window. Even the sizzle of the grill seemed to quiet in anticipation of what would happen next. Keanu moved forward with that distinctive walk, part John Wick's purpose, part Ted Theodore Logan's unassuming manner, stopping precisely halfway between Sarah and the businessman. Things are about to take a turn. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe, like our video, and keep watching. The businessman recovered quickly, professional smile sliding into place as he recognized potential social capital. "Well, if it isn't Keanu Reeves," he said, voice shifting to something close to warmth, "I'm a huge fan of your work. The Matrix, John Wick, classics." He gestured to the empty chair at his table. "Would you care to join us?" "We were just finishing up." Keanu's expression remained unchanged, neither acknowledging the invitation nor the recognition. Instead, he turned slightly toward Sarah. "How long has your shift been?" he asked, his voice low but clear enough for the entire diner to hear. 12 hours, Sarah answered automatically, surprise making her honest. "Double shift." Keanu nodded slowly, absorbing this information with genuine interest. The diner remained eerily silent except for someone whispering, "Is this really happening?" and the soft electronic clicks of phones recording. 12 hours on your feet, Keanu repeated, eyes moving back to the businessman. "Working to pay for college, I imagine." The question was directed at Sarah, but his gaze remained steady on the businessman. "Yes. Medical school applications are due next month," Sarah said, standing straighter despite her exhaustion. Something in Keanu's respect gave her back the dignity the businessman had tried to strip away. The businessman shifted in his seat, the social dynamics changing in ways he hadn't anticipated. His friends looked increasingly uncomfortable, one checking his watch conspicuously. "Look, I didn't know her situation," the businessman said, attempting to reclaim control of the narrative. "I just expect a certain level of service when I'm paying good money." "You're not paying anything," Keanu observed quietly. "That's the problem." A flush crept up the businessman's neck. "It's the principle," he insisted, glancing around for support he wouldn't find. The diner patrons were now firmly in the waitress's corner, empowered by Keanu's intervention. The service was subpar. Keanu reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. The businessman's expression shifted to alarm. No, I don't want you to pay her bill. That's not—" "I'm not," Keanu interrupted softly. Instead of producing money, he removed a worn receipt and held it up. "I've been here for an hour. Sarah took my order, brought my food exactly as requested, refilled my coffee twice without me asking, and somehow managed to do this for everyone else while dealing with your table's demands." The businessman's friends were now staring intently at their phones, trying to dissociate from the situation. One stood abruptly. "I should call my wife. She's expecting me." Keanu continued as if the interruption hadn't occurred. "I watched her handle 3 difficult customers with patience, apologize for kitchen delays that weren't her fault, and help an elderly couple modify their order for dietary restrictions." He looked at the receipt in his hand. "All while you and your friends demanded her attention as if she existed solely to serve you." The teenager who had been recording everything whispered loudly to his friend, "This is definitely going viral." His companion nodded enthusiastically, adding, #Keanu defends diner waitress. The videos were probably already uploading to various platforms, Sarah realized, her future shifting in real time. Keanu looked directly at the businessman now, his gaze neither angry nor judgmental, something far more powerful. Disappointed. Understanding. As if he recognized something broken in the man that needed fixing rather than condemning. "The true measure of a person isn't how they treat their equals," he said. "It's how they treat people they perceive as beneath them." The businessman pushed his chair back slightly, creating distance between himself and Keanu's quiet intensity. His confidence, so impenetrable moments ago, now showed cracks. Around them, the diner had transformed from a place of humiliation to a courtroom of public opinion, with every witness firmly on Sarah's side. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under," the businessman said, his voice losing its commanding edge. 12-hour days are standard in my industry. The expectations, the demands. Then you should understand what it means to work that long." Keanu replied, not unkindly. "The difference is, she doesn't get to take her frustrations out on others." The businessman's last friend stood up, muttering about waiting in the car. The exodus was telling. Rats abandoning a sinking social ship. The businessman's eyes darted between his retreating associates and the phones still recording. Calculation crossed his face as he assessed the damage control needed. Sarah watched the scene unfold as if from a distance, her exhaustion temporarily forgotten. In the service window, the cook gave her a subtle thumbs up. 2 older women at a nearby table nodded approvingly. Even the surly teenage dishwasher had emerged to witness the unexpected drama, dish towel still in hand. "I think you have a choice right now," Keanu continued, placing his receipt carefully on the table. "You can pay your bill, leave a generous tip for service you deliberately made difficult, and walk out of here having learned something valuable. Or you can continue to believe your money and position entitle you to treat people as less than human." The businessman's gaze flickered to the phones, then to the exit where his friends had disappeared, then to Sarah, who stood watching with quiet dignity. The viral potential of this moment was undeniable. The famous actor defending a waitress against a corporate bully. Whatever happened next would be witnessed not just by those in the diner, but potentially millions online. This story is only getting deeper. What would you do in this situation? Comment below, and let's talk. The businessman's hand moved to his inside pocket, producing a sleek leather wallet. His movements were stiff, mechanical, as if each gesture cost him something beyond money. "I never intended," he began, then stopped, recognizing the hollowness of his own words. "Intentions are revealed through actions," Keanu said, his voice neither condemning nor forgiving, simply stating a truth. The attention of the entire diner remained fixed on this unexpected confrontation. Every word, every gesture would be remembered, recounted, shared. The businessman extracted several bills and placed them on the table, far more than the check required. His hands weren't entirely steady. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its performative projection, becoming something closer to genuine. "I've been on calls all day with Hong Kong, London, New York. My wife left a message saying she's taking the kids to her mother's again. I can't remember the last time I slept more than 4 hours." He looked up, not at Keanu, but at Sarah. "None of that excuses how I treated you." A collective intake of breath swept through the diner. This wasn't the defiant non-apology many expected, nor was it the humiliated retreat others might have hoped for. It was something more complex, a moment of unexpected vulnerability. Sarah nodded once, acknowledgement without absolution. The businessman seemed to understand this distinction, not pushing for forgiveness he hadn't earned. Keanu remained silent, allowing the space for this interaction to unfold naturally. "The food was actually perfect," the businessman admitted, a wry smile briefly crossing his face. "I just needed something to control when everything else." He trailed off, not completing the thought. "Anyway, I'm sorry." Keanu's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "There's always time to change course," he said, not just to the businessman but to everyone listening. "I've played characters who thought power meant never showing weakness, never admitting mistakes. They were always the unhappiest ones." The businessman nodded, something like recognition flashing across his features. He stood to leave, straightening his jacket in a gesture that seemed more habitual than necessary. "Thank you for the reality check, Mr. Reeves. I needed it." He turned to Sarah once more. "And I am truly sorry." As he headed toward the door, one of the teenagers who had been recording called out, "Sir, are you okay with us posting this?" The question hung in the air, laden with significance. Whatever answer he gave would determine how this story spread, how he would be portrayed. The businessman paused, his hand on the door. For a moment, he seemed to wrestle with his pride, with the professional image he'd cultivated. Then his shoulders relaxed slightly. "Post it," he said. "Maybe it'll remind someone else to be better than I was tonight." With that, he pushed through the door into the night, leaving behind a diner full of stunned witnesses. The bell above the door jangled, breaking the spell of silence. Conversations erupted immediately, voices overlapping in excitement and disbelief. The teenage dishwasher darted back to the kitchen, already pulling out his phone to tell friends what he'd witnessed. Sarah turned to thank Keanu, but he was already moving back toward his corner booth, away from the center of attention. She followed, still holding the generous tip the businessman had left. The money would help with her tuition payment, but something more valuable had transpired here, a restoration of dignity that transcended financial compensation. "Mr. Reeves," Sarah began as she approached his booth. The actor looked up with a gentle smile that transformed his features from their earlier intensity. "Just Keanu, please," he said, gesturing to the seat across from him. Sarah hesitated, then slid into the booth, her exhaustion returning now that the adrenaline was fading. "Thank you," she said simply, "not just for standing up for me, but for giving him a chance to be better. I don't think I could have done that." Keanu's eyes crinkled at the corners. "You've been standing for 12 hours, he observed with gentle humor. "I think you've done plenty." Around them, the diner buzzed with excitement. Customers who had been silent during the businessman's behavior now approached tentatively, asking for photos with Keanu. With each request, he responded with the same unhurried courtesy, standing for selfies and signing napkins when asked. But he always returned to the booth to continue his conversation with Sarah, making it clear that his priority wasn't the adulation, but the human connection. "Medical school?" he asked after the third interruption, picking up their conversation where it had left off. Sarah nodded, surprised he remembered. Pediatric oncology. My little brother. She stopped, composing herself. Cancer took him when he was 8. The doctors tried so hard, but... She straightened her shoulders. I want to be that for someone else's family. The person who fights for the kids who can't fight for themselves. The truth hung between them, that she was already that person, already fighting, already standing up against odds most would find overwhelming. 12-hour shifts, medical school applications, constant disrespect from people who saw her uniform instead of her humanity. And still, she persisted. The world needs more people like you, Keanu said, his sincerity unmistakable. Not empty flattery, but genuine recognition of her courage and determination. Around them, phones continued to capture the unexpected aftermath, the quiet conversation that would soon spread alongside the more dramatic confrontation. It's not over yet. The best part is coming. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. By the time Sarah's shift ended at 2 a.m., the first videos had already accumulated thousands of views. The night manager emerged from hiding once the drama subsided, astounded to find Keanu Reeves still sitting in the corner booth, nursing a final cup of coffee and chatting with customers who lingered despite the late hour. You're free to go, Sarah, the manager said, unable to take his eyes off the Hollywood star in his establishment. I can handle closing. Sarah nodded gratefully, untying her apron. Her phone vibrated constantly in her pocket. Friends who'd seen the videos, classmates tagging her, messages from numbers she didn't recognize. The digital world was already transforming this night into something beyond her control. As she gathered her textbooks and backpack, Keanu approached the counter one last time. Good luck with your exam tomorrow, he said, remembering yet another detail she'd mentioned in passing. Though I don't think you'll need luck, you've got determination. Sarah smiled, exhaustion and exhilaration competing in her expression. That means a lot coming from Neo himself. Keanu laughed softly. Neo just knew Kung Fu because they programmed him that way. You're doing it the hard way. That takes real courage. Outside, the night air was cool against Sarah's face as she walked to her car. Her phone continued to buzz with notifications, but for now, she silenced it, wanting to preserve this moment before it became public property. By morning, the videos had gone viral. Keanu defends diner waitress trended across platforms alongside "Chak be excellent" to each other and "Shotke who is waitress Sarah." Local news vans parked outside the diner, reporters hoping to interview anyone who had witnessed the exchange. Sarah's phone had so many notifications that it eventually froze, forcing her to restart it before her exam. The story spread beyond mere viral fame, sparking conversations about service workers, about how success changes behavior, about the courage to admit mistakes. Comment sections filled with stories from waiters and waitresses sharing similar experiences, but also unexpected confessions from those who recognized their own behavior in the businessman. More surprising was an email that arrived in Sarah's inbox that afternoon from an unfamiliar address with the subject line, "A proper apology." The businessman had somehow found her through the college she mentioned, writing a lengthy, thoughtful reflection on his behavior and what he'd learned. Your grace in that moment, and Mr. Reeves's intervention, forced me to confront aspects of myself I've been ignoring for years, he wrote. I've scheduled my first therapy session in a decade and had a long conversation with my wife about the person I've become. At the same time, a courier delivered an envelope to the diner addressed to Sarah. Inside was a check that would cover her remaining tuition and a handwritten note on a slip of paper. For the future doctor who already knows how to heal. K.R. double quote. The night manager, capitalizing on the diner's sudden fame, had already ordered a plaque for Keanu's booth and created a special menu item called the Excellent Burger, a reference to Bill and Ted's famous catchphrase. He offered Sarah more shifts, better hours, a raise, all of which she politely declined. She had already received 3 offers for better-paying positions with flexible hours from people who'd seen the videos. A week later, Sarah sat in a quiet coffee shop studying for her MCAT. Her viral moment had settled into something manageable, no longer trending but preserved in the digital landscape as one of those rare internet stories that left people feeling hopeful rather than cynical. She had given one brief interview to a local station, using the platform not to discuss Keanu or the businessman, but to highlight the struggles of working students and the importance of respect in all workplaces. Her phone pinged with a text from a coworker at her new job, a research position at the university hospital that allowed her to work alongside the very doctors she hoped to join one day. The hours were better, the pay was higher, and people treated her with respect not because she was briefly internet famous, but because the culture there demanded it. Life had changed, but Sarah herself remained steady, still studying late, still working hard, still determined to honor her brother's memory by becoming the doctor she'd always dreamed of being. The viral moment hadn't defined her. It had simply removed some obstacles from her path. In Hollywood, Keanu had politely declined all interview requests about the incident. When pressed by a persistent reporter, he simply said, "It wasn't about me. It was about remembering that we're all fighting battles others know nothing about." Then he changed the subject to his latest charity work. As for the businessman, he kept his word. The therapy sessions continued. He started having dinner with his family 3 nights a week, no phones allowed. He implemented new policies at his company about work-life balance. Small changes, perhaps, in the grand scheme, but as Keanu had said that night, there's always time to change course. The truth that resonated from that night in the diner wasn't about celebrity intervention or viral justice. It was simpler and more profound. That true class has nothing to do with money or status, but everything to do with how we treat each other when no one important is watching, or when everyone is. Wow, what a story! If this moved you, imagine what else we have for you. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and let us know what you think.